Welcome to the channel. In this video, we check out the Blum Block Plane, and the first thing that I want to show you guys is how this plane functions and operates. So let's dive in. First things first, this is a beautiful plane. The wood choices are awesome. I like how it's designed because it looks different. It's almost like a futuristic wooden plane. It's also really ergonomic to hold on to. You can hold on to it like that. You can use it one-handed. You can go like that. I just like how it's shaped. I like how it's designed, and it's comfortable to use. The other thing you're going to notice is it's got a lot of different metal features going on here. So thinking about traditional planes, you would think that this right here is the depth adjust. It's not. This is a locking knob that locks the depth adjust. These two right here are the depth adjust knobs. So what you have to do is loosen this and then adjust these for the depth. Turning them to the right brings the blade into the body. Turning them to the left puts the blade out of the body. Now, when we get to this blade setup right here, it's really unique, and I want to show you that too. So, to take the blade out, you have to loosen this locking knob, and then you have to advance the blade at least 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the plane. So, to do that, you would go left, left, left. You can't just take one and turn it all the way because it'll bind. So, you have to do a couple this way, couple that way, couple this way, and you keep doing that until it's where you need it to be. Now, the reason you have to advance it so much, once you've got it advanced, make sure you lock this back down. Once you've got it advanced far enough, then you are good. Now, what you have to do is grab a Torx head screwdriver. This is a T15. And the reason you need to advance the blade so much is because you need to be able to access these screws. You don't have to take the screws out, but you need to loosen them to remove 3 different parts. So this is the back plate. Then very carefully, you're going to remove the blade, which is this part right here, and the chip breaker. This would be considered the chip breaker. The blade is held onto the chip breaker by 2 magnets, like that. So this right here is the blade. It's a very short blade, but the good news is when you do buy from them, he sends you 2 different irons for it as well. So you have this one, and then you have a backup. Now, you might be thinking that sharpening this iron is going to be difficult, and it would be, but they include a honing guide for you. So let's look at that. This honing guide has a few different features that we need to check out before we dive into sharpening the iron. So first things first, these 2 are flathead screws, and on the end of them, they have magnets. So when you take your iron, very carefully, you put it in here like this, and I don't know if you guys saw that, but the magnets will grab the iron. Right now you can see that this is sticking out. Instead of pushing down with my finger, what I've been doing is putting it down onto the board like that, and then that way the blade will go and seat onto that magnet. What these do, you can advance the screws to have the blade go farther out of the honing guide, or retract the screws to have the blade come in closer to the honing guide. While you're doing that, you're going to be sighting down here to make sure that the iron stays square. So right now I have the iron sticking out too far. I'm going to retract these screws and then eyeball to see if it's square. And it looks to be square enough. Then after you do this, you would set it flat on your stone to look and see if you're at the correct projection to make sure that it's hitting the bevel. But for camera purposes, I'll turn it onto its side. So what you're going to do is set it down on your flat surface and make sure that the surface is touching the blade and the bottom of this equally to make sure you have the correct projection. And what that will do is that will sharpen the entire bevel. When you first get the blades, they come at 30, but they recommend honing that 30 degrees to your finest stone. And then they have this piece on the back, which is just the micro bevel. So to do that, you turn this knob, and then you can see they have these little lines, and you can adjust this down to however steep of a micro bevel that you want. And what that will do, you can now see that plastic piece sticking out from the bottom. So that is going to lift this slightly. This is obviously dramatic. It's going to lift this slightly to create a micro bevel on the edge of this. If you are regrinding the bevel, I don't recommend, like if you're going to be using a rough stone or sandpaper or something like that, I don't recommend having this entire surface touch the stone or the sandpaper. Hold it off, have the sandpaper here, hold it off to the side and sharpen that way. Because what I did is I already wore out the bottom of this when I was honing this. When you get to your finer stones, it doesn't matter as much. You're still going to wear this surface off and you're going to wear this down, but that's kind of the nature of this honing guide. You set it down onto the stone and you sharpen this way. If you are able to have a setup where you can go off to the side with sandpaper or a stone, like maybe you have a platform or something like that, you can sharpen off to the side to save the life of this. But that is how the honing guide works. Once you are done sharpening, you take the blade out. They do have these indents into the side to make it a little bit easier to grab the blade. Carefully grab it from the side, trying not to slip, because remember there's magnets in here holding the blade down. So just lift it up as carefully as you can so you don't grab the blade. Sharp part of the blade. And then the first thing you're going to do is take the chip breaker. Remember, the chip breaker is the one that has magnets on it, and it's basically flat on this side. This is the back cap that has indents where those Torx head screws go. So take the chip breaker. The bevel goes the other way, like that. So then that way when it's in the plane, it's bevel down. Oop, don't touch the corners. And then once you have it on there, you need to adjust this, because you set the chip breaker yourself. Sighting down like that. Get it as close as you want it. I know there's all kinds of theories of how close and yada yada, but get it as close as you want. I recommend pushing from the bottom. I have a tendency to want to reach up here and adjust stuff, but you can't because that's the sharp iron. So once you get the chip breaker set, bring it back to your plane. And very carefully from the sides, slide it over those 3 screws like that. Once that's in there, you take the back plate, slide it down here. And then you're going to tighten the Torx screws. So first you want to tighten the middle one carefully. Sometimes I tighten this and it actually shifted things. So just snug it up a little bit. Don't turn it too tight or it could adjust how far your chip breaker is away. It can adjust this mouthpiece. I had that happen a few times. Now from here you have a choice, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to show you in camera, but the frog bed on this plane is actually cambered. So if you don't want a camber, what you have to do is take a Allen key tool that was provided, and inside here, there's no way I'm going to be able to show you that, but inside here there are screws that you can tighten. So what you can do, since the bed is cambered, you can adjust those Allen screws to flatten that out. So when you tighten the screws down, everything is flat. If you leave those Allen screws retracted, when you tighten everything down, it will camber the iron for you, which I think is a really, really cool feature of this plane. You don't have to adjust anything with the blade itself. You adjust a few screws in here, and you can either have a cambered iron or a straight iron, and I just think that that's really cool. So for this one, I'm going to leave it cambered. I'm not going to adjust those Allen keys, but you can if you want to. Oh, you can almost see them right there. Right there and right there. To tighten this down, I'm going to snug up one side. Snug. Snug. And then I'm going to really tighten them. So tight. 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 And there we go. To retract the iron back into the plane, you loosen this locking knob, and then you're going to turn these to the right. Remember, one after the other, or else it'll lock up on you. Then what you can do from here is sight down the plane. Oop, wrong way. Turning each one of these until you get the projection that you want. That seems about right. And then you lock it down, and you're good to go. So the reason I wanted to show you guys how this plane functions is because I want to say that I do not recommend this plane for beginners. There are a lot of adjustments that have to be made. A lot of it relies on your skill. You got to make sure everything that is square yourself. It takes a lot of adjustment. It's not as easy as a Bailey style or a Norris style plane. I would say the easiest planes to start out with are bevel up planes, and I would say that this is one of the most difficult planes that I've ever used. I really struggled to do this video because Blum is a maker-made item with innovation, and those are two things that I really, really like and I really like to support. If you look at my background, most of it is maker-made tools, and then I really like the Veritas Custom because of the innovation. So I struggled to do this. But what I will say is this plane can take amazing shavings. It can take paper thin shavings. It can take thicker shavings. I love the innovation that Blum is coming up with, especially with the cambered frog. So you can have a cambered iron or a straight iron without actually having to change the iron itself. They also make some really cool workbenches. They have some really cool holdfasts. A lot of innovation and creativity going on there, all from a maker, which is phenomenal. These planes are also beautiful to look at. They're comfortable to use. So that's why I struggled. But what I will say is this plane is not for me because of how much setup is involved. You saw what it takes to take the blade out and sharpen it, and then when you put it back into the plane, you have those two different knobs that you have to adjust to get the iron to be square. You have to do the same thing when it comes to the honing guide. The squareness of the iron doesn't matter as much when it's in the plane because you can adjust for that with the screws, but you don't have a lot of life in those irons. So if it's not square and you need to regrind it, there's no way you're taking that little blade to a grinder. You would need to put it into this honing guide, adjust for that squareness, and then rub it up against some sandpaper. And again, that's going to reduce the life. The other thing with that is while it's in the plane, it is a lot easier when the iron is square versus when it's out of square. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other issue is for me, when I was practicing with this plane a lot, once I finally got it set where it was taking beautiful shavings, it was time to sharpen the iron. And to do that, you have to fully advance the blade out of the bottom of the plane, undo those 3 screws, put it into the honing guide, put it back into there, tighten those 3 screws, put the iron back into the plane, and then go through all of your adjustments again. When you look at a Bailey style or a Norris style plane, you can take the iron out, sharpen it. For Norris, it goes almost exactly back where you had it. With Bailey, it's very light adjustment that you have to do again. That's not the case with this. When it comes to adjusting the plane, the other issue I ran into is when you undo this locking knob to make your adjustment, sometimes I would undo the locking knob and the frog and the blade would drop farther out of the bottom. And then I would advance it back into the plane, make my adjustments, think it was square, and then I would tighten this back down, and then it would move again. So I'm not sure if that's just an issue with this plane or if that's a nature of these tools, but loosening and tightening this knob did adjust the depth, which means I had to go back to setting these 2 screws again. Loosen this, it would mess it, so that's just something to keep in mind. If you are a more advanced woodworker and you really like to be able to fine-tune things and get things set exactly how you want to, this plane will do that. You can make it heavier on one side, lighter on one side, all of that kind of stuff. If you like being able to tinker with tools that way, then I would say that this plane is for you. If you caught on to it too, you need a couple different screwdrivers and tools to be able to work onto this plane. So to adjust the camber, whether it's a straight blade or a cambered blade, you need the Allen key, which is provided. But then you need a Torx head screwdriver. This is a T15 to be able to take the blade in and out. When we look at the honing guide, that is a flathead screwdriver. Now, some would say that you'd be able to adjust these by hand, but the issue I ran into is once I was sharpening the iron and swarf and all the stuff that's created when you're sharpening the blade got in there, it did make these too tough to adjust, and I needed to reach for a flathead to adjust them. So again, I love what Blum is doing, thinking outside of the box, creating these beautiful tools, being innovative. I love that he's a maker. I love all of that stuff about this. They're beautiful. They're comfortable to use. They can take beautiful shavings. But I just run into an issue with the functionality of this plane. So I wanted to do this video just so if people know, if they're looking at buying one of these planes, they know kind of how it adjusts and what they're getting into. Because again, this could be a plane for more advanced woodworkers. Don't recommend it for beginners. If you have any of the Blum planes, love them or hate them, please let people know down below. Because what I always say is the best thing you can do for yourself is watch multiple videos and form your own opinion to see if this is going to be a tool for you or not. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, any comments, anything like that, feel free to let us know down below, and have a good day.